Good morning and welcome to the Business Lens of Rapid Television, Abuja. It is great to have you with us on this edition. Business Lens is where we look at how all the numbers and figures directly affect you and your businesses. My name is Divine Alex. So let's begin with the key business trends that matter right now, starting from the headlines. The federal government is targeting 2.5 trillion naira in independent revenue for 2026 as it intensifies efforts to reduce reliance on traditional government funding sources. The Fiscal Responsibility Commission says ministries, departments and agencies generated about 1.84 trillion naira in monitored independent revenue as of September 2025, with the new target expected to come through stronger monitoring of operating surpluses from government-owned enterprises and improved revenue collections across MDAs. Now to the next story that says the Central Bank of Nigeria has revoked the operating licenses of 46 microfinance banks with immediate effect after finding that the institutions failed to meet key regulatory and financial requirements. Now, according to the CBN, the affected banks were cited for serious infractions, including inadequate capital, insufficient assets to cover liabilities, prolonged inactivity, unauthorized closure of operations, failure to commence business within the required time frame, and the inability to sustain minimum capital levels. Now, this move, they say, underscores the Apex Bank's ongoing efforts to strengthen financial system stability, to improve regulatory compliance, and protect depositors within Nigeria's microfinance sector. Now to the next, we have the World Bank that has approved a $1.25 billion development policy financing facility for Nigeria under a new 6-year partnership framework running from 2026 to 2032, with the funding targeted at accelerating private sector-led growth, investment and job creation. This approval comes amid renewed debate over Nigeria's rising debt profile and concerns from citizens about external borrowing, raising a question around whether new financing can translate into real economic opportunities, stronger businesses, and employment growth. Now to the next, we have Nigeria's technology and creative sectors that are set to receive a major financing boost as the Bank of Industry, BOI, signs a $170.06 million fund of funds management contract with Kuramo Capital Management under the federal government's $617 million investment in digital and creative enterprises (IDICE) program. The funding structure, they say, is designed to invest through the venture capital funds that will provide financing to startups and high-growth businesses, with the goal of expanding access to capital, supporting innovation, and strengthening Nigeria's digital economy. The next says the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Taiwo Oyedele, has confirmed that the federal government has assessed the first $1.5 billion under its $5 billion financing arrangement with First Abu Dhabi Bank. Oyedele explained the facility was intentionally structured for phased drawdowns to allow Nigeria to borrow only when funds are needed. According to him, the approach is designed to reduce borrowing costs, improve debt management efficiency, and give the government greater flexibility in financing its budget needs. Now, away from that, we move to the next, where Nigeria's consumer credit markets recorded a sharp decline in February 2026 as household borrowing slowed amid high lending costs and tighter credit conditions. Now, the data from the Central Bank of Nigeria's February economic report shows consumer credit dropped by 780 billion naira, falling 20.48% from 3.81 trillion naira in January to 3.03 trillion naira. This decline suggests that despite improved liquidity in the banking system and easing monetary conditions, many households are still cautious about taking loans as borrowing remains expensive. Now to the next. The federal government is introducing short-term and long-term measures aimed at reducing the pressure of rising transportation costs on Nigerians as economic challenges continue to affect household spending. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Taiwo Oyedele, said after the Federal Executive Council meeting that government is working on interventions to lower public transportation costs, although details of the measures are still being outlined. This move comes amid sustained concerns over the impact of higher living costs, fuel prices, and inflation on Nigerians' daily expenses. Now, away from that, let's head straight into the markets. Nigeria's equities market recorded its worst monthly performance on record in June 2026 as investors lost 13.29 trillion naira in market value following a broad-based sell-off on the Nigerian exchange. The decline came after one of the strongest rallies in the market's history with profit-taking, dividend adjustments, and portfolio rebalancing, triggering heavy selling pressure across multiple sectors. Now, this is a sharp correction that raises questions about whether investors are simply locking in gains after a major rally or whether market confidence is beginning to shift. Now, we will look at those stories and more after the break. My name is Divine Alex. Stay with us. You are welcome back. This is still the Business Lens on Rapid Television, Abuja. My name is Divine Alex. Now, Nigeria's economic story is increasingly becoming a conversation around funding, access to capital, and confidence. While government is targeting 2.5 trillion naira in independent revenue to reduce fiscal pressure, it is also attracting external financing through the World Bank's $1.25 billion development facility and unlocking private sector funding through the $170.06 million Bank of Industry BOI-IDI's Venture Capital Fund. However, households and investors are responding differently, with consumer credits falling by 780 billion naira as borrowing costs remained high, while the NGX suffered a record of 13.29 trillion naira loss in June as investors rebalanced portfolios after a historic rally. Now, the big question is Nigeria creating enough productive capital to drive growth, or are businesses, households, and investors still struggling with confidence and affordability? Joining me to discuss this in the studio is economist Abiola Adekunle from Keto Markets. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Daniel Efa, who is a global business analyst. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning.
Now, you heard when I talked about the headlines, and I want us to start with the federal government wanting to grow independent revenue from 1.84 trillion naira monitored in 2025 to 2.5 trillion naira in 2026. But with Nigeria still facing fiscal pressures and challenges, how significant do you think this is to increase in changing the government's dependence on borrowing?
The numbers might not necessarily have a direct impact on whatever the borrowing figures would be, but then it has impact on efficiency of government. Of course, you might begin to say whatever government's independent revenue sources are, is usually from the machineries that government use. You get in regulating some certain sectors. You get in terms of revenue, some that has to do revenue collection. You get if we could do 1.8 trillion in 2025, the idea is that if you have more compliance, if you have more regulatory oversight, you can probably maybe increase that by another 700 billion. I think that's the rationale behind that. And what that does is that we've seen that the government is trying as much as possible to expand its revenue sources. I really wish the same conversation is being done with crude, because it's almost the same thing. They are both revenue sources for you. If you are focused so much on independent revenue source, which is just you telling people to do more. Like, for example, a typical example is passports. For example, a typical example is driver's license, the road safety issues. Those particular conversations are, you just need to enforce more. You just need to like chase people to do more. You just need to probably, for passport, just probably increase the prices. Those revenue sources will always, they are easy to pick sources. It's just about increasing the number of people that are engaging. But then for the ones that actually require the actual work, we are not hearing anything about that, and that is where I really get it's a bit funny in terms of the way the governments are approaching it. But overall, it is easier to always expand your revenue, right, reduce your expenditure, than always looking to have an expanded expenditure and looking to borrow to always complete it.
Okay, let me come to you, Mr. Economist Abiola. Now, what do you think the challenge is here? Is it, the challenge, is it about Nigeria's revenue potential or the efficiency of collection and remittances?
Well, we have both issues. We have a revenue generation issue. Not so much, but we do have it. The reason is because there are so many dormant opportunities for us to actually raise revenue. If you look at the time before crude oil became very dependent on crude oil, you could see that we thrived in agriculture a lot. The South were known for palm trees and palm products. The North was known for granules. We also exported rubber. Until about 2 years ago, or 1 year plus ago, we were still the producer of one of the most potent and quality ginger, in the whole world. So Nigeria has a whole lot of potential, and we grew up always hearing this phrase that Nigeria is very rich. But what our parents were referring to was the potential, because when we look at the real things that have been done with that potential, it is quite disappointing, and you see other countries that also have something similar to our potential. What they do is to take that potential and invest it as a seed. But in Nigeria, what we do is to take the potential and eat it as a fruit. We think that it is a finished product, like crude oil. Meanwhile, people take it and invest it so that they can actually, bring, bigger revenue in the future. So yes, we have a revenue problem. Also, we have a problem of expenditure. Because we have not cut it in any way. We've not cut it in any way. And when we start cutting expenditure, when we start tightening our belt because of the realities, then that means that our efficiency is increasing. If somebody that makes 200,000 naira and spends 500,000 naira is not efficient, whether you like it or not. You can debate it from now to tomorrow, but it means that somehow, there's no efficiency in it. It's just like somebody that is able to save 10 naira out of 100 naira. If you continue that, it becomes an habit. The day you make a 1 million naira revenue, you will save 10% of it also. But we are always looking for ways to keep expanding our banks so that our spending can be limitless, which we all know is not possible. There's no infinite funds anywhere in this planet.
Okay. Now, when we look at government side, which government-owned enterprises do you think have the capacity to contribute more revenue?
All of them. Almost all of them.
Exactly.
Yeah, because if you look deeply, you will find out that there are ministries that should be doing far, far better. Just like we have states. There is no state in Nigeria that should be reliant on FAC. I'll say it again. There's no state in Nigeria that should be reliant on FAC. I'm not saying FAC should not get to them. I'm saying that it should be secondary.
Yeah.
Because there is no state in Nigeria that is not blessed with one thing or the other. Then all states in Nigeria have human resource. So if you look at it, you find out that anything that has to do with agriculture or food, there's a lot of potential there. Solid minerals, anything mineral, there's a lot of potential there. Anything that has to do with taxes, there's a lot of potential there. Anything that has to do with telecoms, there's a lot of potential there. Human resource, there is a lot. Education, there is a lot. See, if you go and check what are being patented, you will cry for Africa, not even Nigeria. If you see the amount of patents that countries like China are putting in every year, when I talk about patents, for those that don't know, it's when you have an indigenous invention or creation, you quickly go and put it something like a trademark so that nobody will come in the future and steal your stuff and say, oh, I'm the one that invented it. Nigeria has the capacity to invent so much. so much on things that are actually indigenous to us. But you find out that because the educational sector is not up to par, some of these things, when people even discover it, they have to now take it abroad, nationalize there, then now open it up. So you find out that some foreign patents did not even originate from those countries. Do you want to talk about youth transport? How many of our people have gone to nationalize other countries because they want to play for them or they want to run for them because they cannot get the support they need there? So almost all our ministries, agencies, and parastatals have a very high potential to contribute something to the national pulse.
Okay, thank you for that. Now let's head to the next one, where Nigeria has attracted fresh development financing through the World Bank's $1.25 billion facility. That is also creating investment structure like the BOI's IDI's $170.06 million fund of funds. Now, how do we ensure that these funds create productive economic capacity rather than just maybe headlines, Daniel?
Okay, so first things first. I think first things first, you will not be able to. So it's just like someone trying to market a product, right? If you're marketing a product, how do you know, right, what influences people's decision? How do you know what is making them buy or not buy? It is basically data. So if we've done different, again, this is not the first, in fact, this is the second biggest facility from the World Bank in this administration. We had one in 2024, about 1.5 billion also. I think the hope was, about solving issues around subsidy, the subsidy pressures. You get that conversation, for example. What is the update on it, right? Because World Bank will come up again because this particular one is around electricity, around telecom, access to broadband internet, around what it is. There's one on that particular concept that they are being driven around, right? Now, there was also a facility that was cancelled earlier, right? That was also around electricity that was from the previous administration that wasn't effective. So, is there a report of what exactly, why did that not fly, or why did that not achieve the desired result? Because if you keep approving money, that has not been the problem. I just sat that morning and I said, let me do a crisscross into World Bank grants, right, or this kind of loans, this kind of low interest loans, and countries that really used it properly. And one of the best case study was Bangladesh. Bangladesh, for example, is we are almost at the same level in terms of poverty conversation, in terms of diversity, in terms of size. And they're saying that this country has really transformed. They probably move over 30-40 million worth of poverty just because of the World Bank loans. They basically used it judiciously and they achieved those things. So when you now come back to Nigeria, we also have the same assets. We get the same loan. We have the same report. Most of the time, we even use the same names, right? But then, how come we don't have the same result? So you might say, yes, might be to look for a lot of reasons. But then, if you still cannot analyze what the previous one you got and what was the wrong things you didn't do right, or what are the things that you're meant to be doing, what are the recommendations that came from that one, it makes it easier for you to be able to implement a new one. So when you look at the composition, 5 million on healthcare, 5 million people, electricity access, these are extremely bogus figures that I'm almost certain will not also achieve anything come 2-3 years from now.
This is really tricky. Now, let me come to you, Economist Abiola. What should Nigerians measure? I know that he mentioned the cancellation of one of the funds that the World Bank gave Nigeria, and a lot of us are also worried. I think that stirred a lot of conversation, but somehow we've not even had clear explanation to why these particular funds was withdrawn from the World Bank, from our own government. But when we look at all of this and then we are seeing stories like this come up again, that's okay, we are going to access another funds. What should Nigerians measure? Should we be looking at the amount borrowed? Should we be looking at the businesses that were created or jobs that were generated or increased productivity?
I think the first thing we need to look at is full transparency. And for us to get that, we have to, activate this law that allows for open information, flow of information from government. Because how do I measure what I don't know? If somebody gives you 1 million naira without any specifics, I cannot hold you to anything because nobody told you, use this for your hair, use this for your nails, use this for your laptop. So, but when we know that, okay, this is fully what it is in the public domain, we know that these informations are retrievable. But we need people to, lawyers to come up and say, okay, please give us all this info. Let it be in the public domain. Now, once it's in the public domain, we can start following it to the latter. I'll say this again. A lot of things are done shabbily, are not done properly, or are not done at all because people don't know what to expect. You'll find out a lot of these, what they call oversight projects and all these things that senators and reps do. A lot of people don't know what are meant to be done. So when somebody comes to your community and start building a school and builds about 10 classrooms, you clap for them, not knowing that that is meant to be maybe an automated, multi-story, 50 classroom building. So if you don't know, you cannot track. So the first thing we need to know is what are the specifics of these loans. It should be out there. People should be able to study. So once we see it, we understand what it is, then we can now track.
Because when you break it down, they're saying 35 million 35 million people are expected to have access to electricity. About 30 million to healthcare.
So are these solar projects, are these mini grid projects?
And 35
what are
million
they?
To broadband.
Yeah.
And 9 million.
Broadband for what?
And 9 million for agriculture.
Yeah.
So now the conversation is simple. For electricity,
and these subsidies, go ahead.
For example, are you planning to give them increased electricity access? Are you planning to increase the amount of megawatts?
And in what way?
Exactly. Are you planning to give them more meters? Is it metering?
To remind you, I paid for my meter anyway.
Everybody pays for their meter. Everybody pays for their meter.
Because they say it's free. But I paid for it.
In fact, what I
when I'm leaving, I'll take my meter.
What I later heard is that you should come and saying that it's actually free. But what they are charging is for installation.
Daniel, I'll arrest you.
So
you collect 100,000 to install meter.
So broadband.
Okay.
Broadband is we have companies that give access to broadband for internet. Is the government now giving those people money? Is the government now creating infrastructure for those people to use? So at the end of the day, you see that a lot of these conversations, when you break it down, you realize that this is just more like free money. Because it's just more like free money. Because you cannot sit down and tell me you want to get a loan from the World Bank. World Bank, for me, I believe that they definitely have top researchers. Like in fact, most of the time, a World Bank that gives you that kind of loan, that gives you conditions before they give you that kind of loan, should have templates of what they expected to do.
It's not that they have.
So why?
We're not talking about 10 million or 1 million.
Exactly. So why are you going to be saying you want to give 35 million people access to something, and there is no proper roadmap into achieving that? Because that is the only way we can say in 2 to 3 years from now and say, okay, you did not do this particular project, this particular part of the project wasn't done, right? This particular one wasn't done. So it's too bold. In fact, this one looks more worse than the initial one that was cancelled, because then it was essentially a loan. We are using to increase electricity generation and capacity that you can get to the rural areas. But this one, it looks extremely bogus and looks more confusing than even the first one.
When I was in NGO space, one of the most bogus headlines you will see for anything is what they call capacity building. Yeah, because you can spend hundreds of millions of naira on capacity building. That you will not get any. What is capacity? You will not get anything at the end of the day. You know, it's the team bonding and all those things. I'm not saying that in some way they are not useful, but most of the time they are just ways for monies to just flow out and nothing will happen.
Okay, so now let's look at the kind of reforms that the government can actually put in place, right? And we should also look at the private sector aspects. So what reforms must happen for private sectors to actually absorb some of this investments?
Okay, so first things first. Okay. I just sat down and let me look at the figures. I realized that as it stands, you saw figures around. I think you said that at the headline you said something about household borrowings has reduced. It has to reduce because the interest rate is too high, because government is the major borrower. In fact, in the borrowing market, in the borrowing bidding, government comes first before incorporating the corporate companies and then in the individuals.
Can I quickly chip in another angle for the borrowing that reduced?
Yeah.
Is because some people don't have the leverage to borrow again. They borrowed, they have bad loans, they cannot borrow again. They've been blacklisted. That's another reason why borrowing is reducing. Please go on with your...
So when you look at the conversation where you have the government you get, government is basically the highest recipient of borrowings from banks. That means that you get government's willingness to pay so much high interest has made even corporate organizations not have access to these funds, right? So there is no way you can build economies without credit. It's not possible. But if the government is the highest creditor, it is a big problem, right? So when you look at all these conversations about the monies being flowing around, you now begin to look at it from the lens of the fact that can government just step down a bit and allow the businesses that will actually drive the economy. There is no way government spending would translate to economic expansion. There is no way. It has never happened, because government will always be government. Bureaucracy will always take a chunk of effectiveness. If you allow your businesses thrive, right, you will always in turn, right, make more money for yourself. And that is where I really still struggle about as in at the way the government is approaching this thing. Yes, we want to cut down the borrowing cost. I want to expand the net, increase tax net. Want to make more money, but then the more money that have been made so far.
What have been done with
exactly.
Have been done with it.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's also look at the BOI's IDICE program that is, they say, is designed to channel funding through venture capital firms into startups and creative businesses. But we have many Nigerians businesses still struggle beyond access to capital, from infrastructure challenges to high, operating costs. Now, this is the question, Economist Abiola. Is financing alone enough to build globally competitive Nigerian companies?
Yes. Financing alone is enough. If you had grants, good. The question is, at what interest rate is the loan? If I give a startup that has a good invention, sorry, not fintech, we're tired of fintechs. Not that we're tired, we'll have enough. So good inventions.
But it's likely be fintech, don't worry.
No fintech. Alternative energy, manufacturing, value chain, industrialization of the agricultural sector. And we're looking at things that can actually produce things we can hold on to. We're looking at clothes factories, things that we know that these are ventures that are tangible. Then, and the loans coming at an interest of single digits, worst case scenario, less than 20% in a year. I think if it's a good startup, they will actually thrive. But you have to also understand you need to have enough money. I was talking to someone yesterday about my own type of business, and he was saying that, why can't I just start my own? I said, in the business I do, there is no midway. It's either you have the funds or you don't have it. You ask, okay, what amount of funds do I need to start? I said, okay, we're looking at 10 to 100 million, no, $10 to $20 million. I now shouted, I said, because there are some businesses like manufacturing, when you start it with half measure, you end up not making anything. So if they can get the proper amount of financing, and financing at a good interest rate, yes, we can compete on a global scale. Don't underrate Nigerians at all. I'm a Nigerian, but I'm also marveled by Nigerians, because when you see the level of intelligence that comes out of this country, even you'll be shocked, because if you find out around the world, most of the inventions that are made, look at the companies. Somewhere you see a Nigerian there. If you look at universities, look at those doing research, PhDs, masters. If you look at the number of blacks, Nigeria will hold more than 30%, there. So yes, we can compete globally. Yes, we can do it with financing. The question is at what cost?
Interest rate? Okay.
For me, right, just to chip this in, because I've kind of the creative space. What we've seen so far with creative space, entertainment, and the rest is that government has really done nothing, right? But these guys have practically built these
on their own,
right? So, if government is coming in to support, I think what you should be doing is the kind of stuff we did with the export free zones that entrepreneurs are enjoying. You need to set up entertainment villages. You need to actually create such spaces, right? So that it gives them. If I'm going to
like Hollywood,
exactly. If I'm going to a certain location that there's cameras, everything is there, I'm only just going there to shoot my content. It's automatically reduces my cost by half, right? And you will now see a lot of more quality content come. So it will make sense if a venture capitalist is coming and say, I'm investing in business A because yes, Business A already has a potential because of what I'm seeing. That
The infrastructure is there.
Yeah,
Yes.
and this person can actually be there and be able to create as much as possible. What we have now are creative minds that they are
They
the
do
ones doing the
everything.
same from the
Yes,
beginning.
from beginning. And that's why they cry when they go
Exactly.
to the cinema.
Someone had to create a movie village for himself, for his business.
There's a producer that did that.
Exactly. Which shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be.
And those are the conversations that I don't know how ministries that are in charge of these things would sit down and just you guys want to invest in it. Yeah, go and invest. Why not tell them, they want to invest in you, but let us set up this team, because that a taxpayer will only be more responsible when he understands or feels that this government is paying the taxes to are actually giving him something of value. You cannot just see, as soon as there's no value exchange, it becomes extortion. And that's why those guys are complaining that they don't want to pay taxes, because what exactly am I benefiting from the structure?
There was a guy, one of my mentors, he's an Italian, but there was a time I was in the US and he had a particular illness. He's about 50 years. And he said he called 911 and he passed out. He said by the time he opened his eyes, he was in the ICU. And he was now saying that if he was in another country, that maybe that would have been the end. But he was able to make that call. And he passed out. He practically broke his door, took him to the hospital, took care of him. So tell me why that person would not go and pay his tax. Another thing is, when government develops infrastructures, especially in the entertainment space, they can control narratives. One of the things that Western countries do, and that we grew up believing, is that they have a certain narrative about their country.
True.
Their military do not fail. They always win every war. They have a Rambo mentality. There's one man that can defeat everybody.
Exactly.
All those narratives came from their government. You hardly have a military film coming out that the government does not have a hand in it. Now, imagine we have those infrastructures. We can project our military. We can project our air force. We can project our culture. But now the projection we are having is the one that the creative directors and producers think of themselves. Okay, this one is bad, this one is good.
He's thinking that ship. So if he's thinking that ship, the only thing he comes out with is that ship. Anything has to do with that ship.
You come to Lagos, after 1 year, you have made it. You go back and pepper the girl that left you in the village.
Exactly. Okay, I don't know why you are telling Hollywood story.
It's not a story.
Okay, now so let's look at the sectors. Some of the sectors that we think that are within Nigeria's digital economy that can actually benefit from this IDICE program. What sectors within this digital economy do you think have the strongest growth potential if they're able to tap into this IDICE program, that we could actually see something new or something that we would all be proud of? Daniel, let me start with you.
IDICE is about creativity, right? But so at the end of the day, right, what I like, you said financing, but then I still feel like at the end of the day, if you do not set some things in place, you probably get the monies and probably waste it all on setting up infrastructures yourself, right? So, for example, power is one major issue, right? If there is no way, power, internet, right? Imagine there's no way you'd have.
I think internet has been solved to some extent
because
if you have
private
the
guys
funds, you can actually.
Private guys are
of course, satellites.
Exactly. So, but power is a big conversation. Virtually, now you cannot build anything in Nigeria right now without having to think about your own power, and that alone is a problem. I think I was in Ghana and I was asking the guy, like, okay, so tell me, when is your day off? Because it must be a day off. I'm wired to understand there must be a day off, and there was no day off, rain or sun or so.
There was always power.
Creativity conversation is easier when there is infrastructure. So there is no way. If you still give someone a billionaire, he will still spend up to 400-500 billion to just set up infrastructure first, and that is a problem.
The thing is, I told my family once. I said one of the first hurdles I wanted to overcome was power and internet. The reason is because the amount of energy you dedicate to it, you'll be thinking, I need to buy fuel, gen has gone down, this and that.
Even the servicing of the generation.
Yes,
as well.
the problem. Some people have turned to some ladies now, professionals, gens they service their gens. They've gained another skill because of the this thing of the government. So I feel that the conversation should go around a lot of innovations, and also we still need to look at goods and sports. Trade and investment, those are ministries that we can actually push into. I was reading an article yesterday, and the Western world is already moving to take data centers that are in charge of artificial intelligence response, in quote, and take them up. They want to take them to space because they said that their heat dissipation is more. So that they can't worry about rivers drying up, seas drying up. And now Elon Musk is taking it further, that he wants to generate solar energy from space where the sun never sets and beam it down to Earth to generate electricity. That is what the world is talking about. We have not even gotten 6 hours stable current electricity in Nigeria.
And no day offs.
Sorry. It's a must. It's a must.
Okay.
Take a day off.
Our electricity, I think, is powered by a human being.
Yeah,
so the guy has to rest.
You have to rest. Power grid has to rest.
Okay, so let's take a swipe to the consumer credits that dropped by 780 billion naira in 1 month, falling 20.48% from the 3.81 trillion naira that went to 3.03 trillion naira, despite the conversation around improving banking liquidity. What does this reveal about the Nigeria's consumer, Daniel?
I think you said it earlier about the fact that I think consumers don't have the funds to continue, or don't have the leverage to keep borrowing more.
Blacklisted.
That's one. Number two is the fact that the sustained high rates is also a problem, right? Because one would be expecting that the goal of an interest rate increase initially was that it was planned to drive down inflation, right? Inflation, at least based on what we are seeing, well, based on what they are telling, the figures that are coming out from MPS, is that inflation is about 14-15%, right? So why has the interest rate not followed suit, right, to ensure that people can borrow cheaply? Because it's not possible, it's not magic, right? If you don't increase wages, right, to a considerable level, you should reduce cost of borrowing, so that even if inflation is high and you can't sustain yourself with your wages, you can basically have access to more funds, and that is where there is a big discord, right? So it has, in fact, what it has done is that it has widened the gap between the formal economy and informal economy, so much so that formal economy looks like they are actually not making money as the informal. In fact, right now, if you're in the formal economy, you're actually suffering a lot of brunt. Government has increased taxes for you. Government is now on your neck to ensure that you do a lot of things, and you can't have access to funds. But in the formal economy, you can have access to all those things because you're really hiding away from, and that is why CBN is saying we have more cash in the economy in circulation than ever before, because nobody wants to go formal. Everybody's trying to hide from the formal, because the formal economy is stifling the progress of the economy. So
the revenue is never increasing.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, we need to begin to choose what we really want to do. Choose what is the direction. Well, right now what we are doing is, yes, we are making reforms. We are shocking everything that was a loophole. But now we need to leave that conversation and need to move to the next phase. What should the next phase look like? If you are spending a lot, your spending is not reflecting. What are you then spending on? So this is and that was always the issue. Like, as soon as you make these reforms, you need to be extra sure that your spending would make sense, because then that was the bet. If you bet on effective spending, by now everything would have been looking good. For example, if you made so much on subsidies and your focus was let us build roads, by now you'd have finished your road project. Everywhere. Finished your road project. Everywhere. Right. Cost of transportation will suddenly just drive down, and
business will increase.
Suddenly everybody now wants to use their roads, use the roads to move goods and services. Suddenly agro-produce begins to drop.
Let me tell you for free that insecurity while traveling is also increased by bad roads.
Actually.
Because there are very few people that will stay on the road when the road is smooth. They will not want to risk that all of us people die. But when you have to slow down because of bad roads, it's increasing insecurity.
Okay, so now let's look at how this affects businesses. What does weaker consumer borrowing mean for businesses that depend heavily on household spending?
It means they are dying off.
Exactly.
They're dying off. I was at a diner this week, Monday, and I sat down there with someone, a big space, that can contain at least about 100 people. And I counted all of us, there were about 5, and I could see the number of workers. The one I could see were at least about 30. Cashier, security, and all that. There was even a pool there, and I'm like, How many people are even back, maybe in the kitchen and all that? How is this business going to survive? Because you have to pay all those people there. How many of us are eating? This is a place that when you go before, they might have to go and bring seats for you to set up your own seat because there's no space. You know, so when people have to go back to survival, all they want to make sure, first of all, is that they eat and they are alive. If you go to a boutique or all these so-called big places in Wusetu, you go there, spend 1 hour there, count how many people come in to come and buy stuff. That is why some people will quickly go to the direction of, oh, this is money laundering. No, not all of them are money laundering. Some actually want to do real business. But will they be able to continue for a long time? I doubt, because people have now gone back to survival. Let's eat, let's be alive.
Let's be alive.
If we have extra, we'll pay for school fees. If not, you'll be homeschooled though.
Okay, so let's look at what should happen next for credit expansion to support growth. What do you think needs to happen to support growth without increasing households' debt pressure, Daniel?
Government needs to stop borrowing, because the reason why the rates are high is because government is saying it's a bidding war. Government is saying, no worry, I'll pay you more, but give me the money. I'll give you more interest. So
there's not enough available.
There's nothing available. See, banks, the amount of money banks throw into bonds, treasury bills is so much that you are wondering, is that the primary role of our banks? Everybody has left the concern around borrowing anybody any money, except maybe you have long-standing relationship with them, and so companies are now pushed to actually now issue their own commercial papers. Meanwhile, that's not the case before.
There's another bond coming out.
It's already out. So there is no way you're going to the market and competing with government. It's not possible.
There's a concentration risk with banks. If you have more than 30-40% of your borrowings tied to one entity or one customer, it's a concentration risk. And now I'm just being generous with 30%. It's way more than that.
It is way more. Okay, now let's quickly talk about what happened on the NGX that lost a record of 13.29 trillion naira in June, that's last month, after one of its strongest rallies. While we have conversations around the fact that investors cried or cited profit taking, we also have dividend adjustment and portfolio rebalancing. Now, Daniel, should this be viewed as a normal market correction, or does it reflect deeper concerns about Nigeria's economic outlook?
But I think we're in a space when I said that this was going to burst very soon. It's just the way the market works. You can't move in a 5 month, 60% in a 5 month period. I don't expect a month where people are going to definitely take out funds. See, we don't understand, like, we're in the market, we understand how these things work. When we saw Bitcoin moving as if it was heading for $1 million.
It was taking red.
It was sprinting. So we always knew that it was going to happen like that. And this is why it's even worse for Nigeria, in the sense that almost 75% of funds is concentrated in the big players, like the major guys, the PFAs, the banks are holding at 75% of the trading. The volume is in their hands. So retail participants are probably 25% of the entire market, right? So what happens is that they are the ones that decide that. So if, for example, you've entered, you get with 50 billion naira, a share at maybe 2 naira, and the share gets 20. You've practically done a good number. You can take out, as soon as you take out those funds, as soon as you sell those, everything goes down. That's basically what's happening. So for retail investors, you have to play the way they play. And that's what we advise, that you play like the big banks play. You need to know how they are thinking, when they are thinking, and what moves their rationale. So when you start saying, there's a big rally, 50%, 60%, it's not fully exciting. It doesn't mean you should start entering at that 50%. It means that you should wait until these guys take out profit again for you to re-enter, and that is basically, and that move was not just for June. Just wait, it will still happen again before August, right? Because the concept is simple. They will drag it all in again and do the same thing. It's a law.
I'd like to add one word, which is also peculiar with what time we are in now, and that word is elections. Elections are 6 months away, practically. So a lot of big money that enter into the market to prop up their funds are now pulling out to support elections. People are pushing to sponsor their candidates. Go and check the stocks that happened. You see that they are majorly big stocks that have a lot of followership, that are basic investors. So that's one. elections, because people now want to start supporting, campaigning for their candidates, local government or whatever, House of Rep. That's one. Two, elections again, because of uncertainty. Some people want to be out before anything, because this should have normally happened in November.
Yes.
But everybody was like, oh, I cannot wait till November. Let me just be safe than sorry. So elections for me.
Elections for you. Thank you so much, Economist Abiola, and thank you so much, Daniel, for being a part of today's conversation. Now, from government revenue targets to global financing, startup funding, household borrowing, and market movement, today's conversation shows that Nigeria's biggest economic question is not just about how much money enters the system, but how effectively that money translates into growth, jobs, business expansion, and stronger confidence. Now, the real test is whether capital is reaching the parts of the economy that can create lasting value. And this is how we leave you on today's Business Lens on Rapid Television, Abuja. My name is Divine Alex. Bye for now.